The steam hissed and the iron wheels screeched to a halt as the train arrived at the dusty platform of Oak Ridge, a small, sun-drenched town nestled in the heart of Montana. As passengers disembarked, bustling with suitcases and hellos, a young woman in a pale blue dress stood frozen at the threshold of the last car. Her gloved hand trembled around the polished brass railing. The heat, the noise, the uncertainty, it all swirled together. Her name was Eliza Bennett, and she was a mail-order bride. She was also about to faint. With a soft gasp, Eliza's world tilted. The platform spun. Her knees buckled and she collapsed forward, straight into the arms of a man she had never met. "I've got you," came the deep, steady voice, laced with concern and a hint of awe. He held her gently but firmly, as if she were made of something far more precious than bone and breath. His shirt was coarse and dusty from work, and his arms were strong from years of labor. He looked down at her face, pale from the journey, framed by auburn curls sticking to her damp cheeks. In that moment, even before she could open her eyes, something in his heart stirred. "Miss? Are you all right?" Eliza blinked slowly, disoriented. I think so," she whispered. Her English accent was soft, musical, so unlike the women of Oak Ridge. She looked up into the stranger's eyes, warm brown, flecked with gold, brimming with concern. "You must be Mr. Carter," she murmured, almost apologetically. "I am," he said, still holding her as she tried to regain her footing. "Matthew Carter. And you must be Eliza." She nodded, cheeks flushing with embarrassment and heat. "I didn't mean to faint. The journey was long and overwhelming." Matthew smiled gently. "You've come a long way to start a new life. No one's judging you here." He paused, his voice tender. "You fainted right into my arms, Miss Eliza. That's one way to make a man fall fast." She chuckled softly, surprised by his humor, and even more surprised by how safe she felt with him. Eliza had never intended to become a mail-order bride. She had dreams once, dreams of teaching, of exploring the world, but after her parents died during a harsh winter, her dreams collapsed under the weight of debt and loneliness. Her only brother, swallowed by factory life in Manchester, had barely enough to eat himself. Desperation had led her to reply to a small ad in the back of a London paper: "Honest man seeks kind-hearted woman for marriage. Will provide shelter, safety, and respect. Must be willing to travel to Montana." She replied with little expectation. But Matthew Carter had written back, steadily, respectfully, warmly. They exchanged letters for 5 months. She learned of his quiet life as a rancher, his late parents, his sense of duty and kindness. And slowly, Eliza began to imagine something she hadn't dared to believe in again: hope. Now, standing before him, the desert wind sweeping through the platform, she saw that he wasn't just kind on paper. He was real. He caught her, literally, and something about the way he steadied her, as if she mattered deeply already, tugged at the lonely corners of her heart. Matthew helped her into the waiting wagon, and the ride to the ranch was filled with quiet exchanges, small laughter, and mutual shyness. He pointed out the land, the cattle, the ridge where the sunset always made the sky blush. Eliza soaked it in like a dry sponge, each moment grounding her more. But not everything was perfect. That evening, as Matthew made stew in the modest kitchen and Eliza unpacked her trunk in the small guest room, she paused at a photograph on the mantel. A woman, dark-haired, beautiful, and sad-eyed, smiled faintly in a faded frame. Matthew noticed her gaze. "That was Margaret," he said softly. "My first fiancée. She passed 2 years ago. Fever took her before we could wed." Eliza turned to him, unsure of what to say. "I wasn't sure I could love again," he admitted, voice low. "But I was so tired of the silence. Of eating alone. Of dreams dying in my chest. So I tried something different. I reached out into the world. And you answered." Eliza's eyes welled. I wasn't sure I could love again either, she whispered. But I hoped, maybe someone out there still believed in kindness. He stepped closer. I don't know what this will become, Eliza. But I promise I'll always treat you with respect. No matter what. It wasn't a sweeping proposal or a love poem. It was something better, a vow of honor. Weeks passed, and Eliza bloomed. She tended to the chickens, helped cook, read aloud by the fire at night. She taught a few local children to read under the shade of a cottonwood tree. Her laughter grew more frequent, her hands less shaky. But she often wondered, could Matthew truly love her, or was she simply a companion to replace loneliness? One afternoon, a letter arrived from her brother. She opened it with trembling hands. He had fallen sick, badly. The doctor's fees were too much, and he might not survive the winter. Eliza wept into her apron, folding the letter with care. That night, she packed her few belongings in silence. Matthew found her at dawn, standing at the wagon with her trunk. I have to go back, she said, eyes red. My brother's ill. He has no one else. I know this wasn't part of the plan, but... Matthew reached into his coat and pulled out a small pouch. Coins clinked gently. You're not going alone, he said. Her breath caught. But the ranch, your savings. Family matters, he said simply. He's your only kin. You go, and you take this. I'll manage. Tears spilled freely now. You do that for me. I love you, Eliza, he said finally, voice quiet but certain. Not because you came here. But because you stayed, because you smiled, because you cared about every living thing on this land. You are more than a mail-order bride. You're the heart this house forgot it needed. She collapsed into his arms again, this time not from exhaustion, but from the overwhelming weight of being seen, and loved. Eliza left the next morning, not knowing if she'd ever return. Months passed. Winter cloaked the land in silence. Matthew worked alone, his hands rough and tired, but he kept the fire going in the hearth she once lit, and the bookshelf dusted where her books lay. He didn't write, didn't want to pressure her. He just hoped. Then, one early spring morning, as the train whistled through Oak Ridge again, Matthew stood on the same dusty platform. And there she was. Stepping off the train, not fainting this time, but walking tall. In her arms, a small child, her nephew, now orphaned. And beside her, a hope reborn. I came home, she said softly, tears shining in her eyes. If you'll still have me. Matthew took the child in his arms, then kissed Eliza's hands gently. This was always your home. As the sun rose higher, the town bustled around them. But for Matthew and Eliza, time stood still, anchored not in grand gestures or perfect beginnings, but in a love built on quiet strength, kindness, and a heart once caught in the fall. And this time, it was the world that caught its breath.